We would borrow 80% against our receivables, 50% against our inventory. We priced our products right, so we weren't losing money. And we managed to, through that, internally finance the company. In fact, before I sold it, I actually was able to eliminate the debt. But I'm just a firm believer that if you keep your overhead low and you watch your costs, you should be able to do that. By the way, we didn't have the fanciest buildings. We didn't have the most amount of employees. We were lean and mean. That's how we did it. But we grew to be the largest manufacturer of laundry sinks in America.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rear-view mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this. And it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school. And accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. This Thursday is our last live Q&A session. Right now, I am not doing any for 2024, so if you want to chat with me and see what's going on, there's a link to sign up for the session this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Today, we've got an entrepreneur on who understands how to be successful in business and the money side of business. His name's Julian Rubinstein, and today he's in charge of American Asset Management. But he's worked with various companies across various industries, and there's certain things that he's learned from that. The biggest thing is how to improve cash flow and profitability for your business. He's going to give us concrete examples and tips on keeping overhead low, negotiating better terms, cutting unnecessary expenses. See, he's always been profitable. He gets it. And we're going to share those tips so you can be too. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Julian Rubinstein. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your businesses?
Sure. Well, I reside in Boca Raton, Florida, and my business career as a mold has been long. I started out actually in college. I was a distributor for the New York Times at Syracuse University and managed to turn it into the largest single distributorship in the country. We sold thousands of New York Times every day. And from there, after graduation, I joined a small plumbing supply manufacturer in Canada that made basically laundry sinks and shower doors. And I was their first U.S. salesperson. I ended up buying the U.S. division from them, and then later sold it to Masco Corporation, which is the owner of Delta Faucet. From there, I did some private equity work, and then I started my current business, which is a registered investment advisor, where we manage money for individuals.
Nice. Quite a bit of history in business. So before we hit record, we were having a conversation about cash flow, and you mentioned to me you've never had a cash flow problem or
Correct.
An issue. How is that possible?
Well, so my first business, which was the newspapers, was simple because you bought newspapers and sold them. There was nothing to invest in. And because I was selling New York Times, they supplied the vending machines, which many of your listeners probably don't even know what that newspaper vending machine is. And for newspapers for 25 cents. But then in my manufacturing business, we never had a cash flow problem because we were not afraid to take on reasonable amounts of debt. So as I mentioned to you, we would borrow 80% against our receivables, 50% against our inventory. We priced our products right, so we weren't losing money, and we managed to, through that, internally finance the company. In fact, before I sold it, I actually was able to eliminate the debt. But I'm just a firm believer that if you keep your overhead low and you watch your costs, you should be able to do that. The last thing you want to do is be cash poor. It makes no sense to me. And by the way, we didn't have the fanciest buildings. We didn't have the most amount of employees. We were lean and mean. That's how we did it. But we grew to be the largest manufacturer of laundry sinks in America.
But you were still borrowing money. I mean, it sounds like you were even factoring receivables, but then you paid it off. How did you create the excess cash flow to pay off all of that debt?
Just by keeping our expenses low. We really were very, very tight on expenses. We were the lowest cost manufacturer in the industry. I think we prided ourselves on that. We would take our competitors' products and literally pull them apart, see if they had doing anything better than we were. And we were constantly re-engineering our products to make them less expensive. Not cheaper, but less expensive.
You mean less expensive to produce?
Correct. Didn't take the quality out. We just found ways to make it less expensive. Like, for example, in a shower, we were making handrails out of aluminum. And we found that if we spent some money on a mold, we could do it out of injection molded plastic. It would be stronger and cost half as much to make.
Sell them at the same price?
Yes, of course. Right. In fact, like our biggest savings was our legs for our laundry sinks were steel that had to be painted white. It was an extremely labor-intensive process. Once we went to structural foam legs, which were 300% stronger and cost, I think, 80% less to make. That's a classic way. And then all that money drops to the bottom line. I think it's easy. I should add, I think it's easy to have a lot of cash if your sales are growing, right? I would say a company that has growing sales is the best thing because you have the volume to help you and constantly cut your costs, find new suppliers. It's very hard if your sales are declining. And I say that I was in the turnaround business for a while.
I don't disagree with you, but what we have found, depending on the business model, growth is one of the number one reasons for bankruptcy because they outgrow their cash flow.
Yeah, we talked about that. I mean, I sold to some of the largest retailers in the country. They were not keen on paying very fast. But, we generally got paid in less than 60 days. We paid all our suppliers in 60 days. So we had a little bit of float there. We didn't carry tremendous inventory. Maybe it also comes down to we were priced right. We had nice margins. We had 30, 40% margins. And we turned our inventory pretty quickly.
So you're talking about other things. So when you say you turned your inventory quickly, that means it wasn't sitting on the shelf forever. You didn't have a year of it, right?
No, not at all. In fact, in some of our bigger products, we actually subcontracted out the manufacturing. So we had no inventory. As it came off the molds, it would go into a box, into a truck, out to Home Depot, right? And then so we're actually getting paid. We're not even putting in inventory, and we're getting paid before we have to pay the supplier.
See, that's how you make money. When you get paid before you have to pay for the product, you
Correct.
Can grow indefinitely.
Right.
It's when Home Depot owes you money and you have to pay the supplier and Home Depot doesn't pay you for 60 days. That's when you get into trouble.
Right. Correct. But there's ways around that. I mean, especially if you have the best price and you have the best product, Depot's not going to string you along because they want the product. And they know that, and especially today, the big retailers they're not as dictatorial as they used to be. They want you to be profitable because they need you as a supplier. So if you're a good supplier and you tell them this is what I need to be able to supply you the products at the price you want, they will work with you.
I think a lot of people would push back on that. Is it because they haven't built a good reputation with?
It's twofold. Either there's too much competition and they're desperate for the business, or don't laugh, they're just afraid. When I was younger, I was afraid. I would never go to Depot and say something like I just did. But I learned from a good friend of mine who was the largest manufacturer of pillows in the world. And he worked hand in glove with Walmart to make sure that he was profitable because they wanted him as a supplier and he wasn't afraid to walk away. And I learned that when I sold to Masco. They did not operate out of fear. I remember once they went to Depot and said, we're pulling out because the price, it doesn't make any sense. We might as well just send you $10 every time you give us a purchase order and skip sending you the product. And we got a price increase because they wanted the product.
So congratulations for them for realizing that it was costing them $10 to send the product, right? Because I think a lot of people don't even know that number. And then second, to say we're walking away. But what I find happens more often than not is people get themselves stuck. So maybe they start off with vendor X or, company X, and they've got some healthy margins, and then they build up all this infrastructure. And now if they lose company X, they can't pay the nut on the infrastructure.
And that is a problem when you have concentrated customers. One of the reasons I sold to Masco is that we were, we had 3 customers. So yes, we would be in that position. But now when we sold to Masco, they had 56 divisions, all selling to Home Depot. As far as Masco was concerned, if one division lost the business, so what? It's 156. So they were never put in that position. They were able to go there with strength.
Let's talk about being lean, because even in other businesses you've had, you've always been super lean.
Yes. Well, first of all, as we've talked about it, I don't think it's important to, unless your business needs image, right? The image is really just for yourself. So, for example, when we started out in business, we had a really ugly factory, right? I remember the roof used to leak, but we were literally paying $1 a square foot. Now, mind you, that is in the 80s, so extrapolate it to now, but it's not a lot when you're starting at $1 a foot. We always kept our overhead low. We always added people after we needed them, not before we needed them. That was a big thing that we did. You got to stay lean. Even like today in my business now, I'm an investment advisor. I have very few assistants, right? And we're very lean. I know firms that are smaller than us that have 4 times the staff that we do, and I have no idea what those people do all day. I'll give you a great story. My daughter worked for Airbnb, and I went to see her. And Rocky, there were people sitting at their desks doing absolutely nothing. And the proof of the pudding is when COVID hit, they laid off 25% of the staff and stayed in business and grew the business. There are so many businesses out there. Look what happened last year with all the technology companies, Facebook, Google, laying people off. Obviously, those people weren't doing very much because the companies grew with less people.
How many people did Elon lay off when he took over Twitter? Do you remember?
A lot. When I was in the private equity business, we bought a company that had 80 employees. I kid you not, we laid 72 of them off, and we did just fine because the company went public to make a 3D computer mouse for gaming, which failed. The whole business was for CAD CAM. They had one customer, General Motors. We only needed 8 guys to support that business, but the other 72 that were there for gaming were just walking around doing nothing. It's shocking. I've seen so many businesses like that. That's the extreme, but it's a true story, but it is the extreme. But I would say most businesses are overstaffed.
Did they just take their profits from GM and try to grow somewhere else? Is that how they got into that situation?
No, what happened was they went public on the hopes of the gaming business. And when it failed, the owner at the time he just couldn't give up the dream and didn't realize that if he wanted to stay in business, he had to get rid of all these people.
I think big companies are really good at laying people off. I think small companies have a very difficult time doing that.
Well, because it's an emotional thing, right? They don't want, if you're small, all your employees, they're like family to you, and you don't want to just lay them off. So therefore, you got to make sure that you're always running shorthanded, not longhanded. Then you don't come into that problem.
I'm wondering how people get ahead of themselves in that. Like, how do they end up hiring more people than they need?
Oh, it's so easy. In my business, I'll never forget, I had an assistant that could not get her work done. So we had to hire someone else to help her. Well, and this woman was staying until 7, 8 o'clock every night. This new woman comes in, and by like 1, 2 o'clock, there's no more work left. So we let the other person go. I mean, it's just some people are efficient at what they do and others are not. Now, I could have, taken a blind eye to it and said, hey, this woman was great. She's been here for a long time. But what was I supposed to do? This other woman came in and was able to do the job in less than half the time. And that's just one example.
And unless somebody's watching them to know if they're efficient or not efficient, you sometimes just assume you need more, don't you?
Yes. In fact, when we sold to Masco, I remember them coming in and saying, wow, you're so understaffed. You need people here. You need people there. I'm like, why? We're doing just fine. We don't need all those people. They want us to put in this entire layer of middle management to do absolutely nothing.
So that's corporate, because corporate is if I'm a manager and I've got 10 people under me, that's much better than I'm a manager and I have 3 people under me, right?
Correct.
It's ego.
Right. Yep.
But the small business owner hopefully does not have that problem.
But he can also get talked into it. You can have a VP of sales that says, I need a sales guy to cover this part of the country and another for here. And next thing you know, he's got 6 guys. Now I need a manager to help me manage those 6 guys. Or you can have a guy who's very take charge and says, I got this. Give me a couple of reps and we'll do just fine.
What else did you see in the private equity business in how businesses were not efficiently run?
Well, remember, our focus was on buying distressed companies and turning them around. So we saw basically very poorly run companies.
Let's talk about that. What made them poorly run?
What made them? I think the companies we looked at one point were very profitable. Sales started suffering, and they just, as you say, they were afraid to lay people off. I mean, for example, we bought a company that was in trouble, yet they still had a box at for the football games in Kansas City and the baseball games. You got to be kidding me! You're losing money, and you have a super box. I mean, who does that? In fact, what we used to do when we took over a company, the first thing we would do is cancel all the Wall Street Journal subscriptions. First thing we used to do. We say, you want the Wall Street Journal, go buy it yourself. And that was just to show them that we're watching the low-hanging fruit. We're going to watch, if we're going to watch the Wall Street Journal, we're also going to watch the more expensive stuff.
Spending less is difficult. I'm a big, big fan of being frugal. I'm a big fan of being lean. And you know what happens now you can see it when you have a little bit of flush times, you tend to sign up for all this stuff. And when times go lean again, it's really difficult to get rid of it all.
Right. Well, how about just on a consumer side? I bet you so many people have so many music streaming services, so many video streaming services. They don't even realize how many they have. And then if they ever sit down and say, how often do I really watch that? I'm picking on a Hulu. Or how often do I listen to that music service? You could really cut back. But they say, it's $10 a month. Who cares? Well, you have 10 of those a month. It's now $100 a month. Now it's $1,200 a year.
And the same thing happens in business. We sign up for all these trials for all these different software programs and we forget to cancel them.
I think that's the brilliance. I mean, in our own business, we had, you have to remember when you lay off an employee, if you're using Gmail, to go and cancel that account. Not just block the email, cancel the account. I bet you there's so many businesses that are paying for Gmail accounts that are inactive.
They're paying for a ton of licenses, and they probably don't even know who had a license to what and who's using what and whether or not anyone is still using it. Some might still be paying for AOL for all we know about.
When I moved into a community, I was put on the board. We had a guardhouse, and we had a phone bill for $300 a month. So I just assumed, oh my God, the guards are calling Europe or something. It turns out they had never changed the phone plan from when the place was built. And it was back when phones were expensive. And they literally were paying $350 a month for one phone line. Because nobody looked. Nobody cared.
And I think that's the problem. If you're a business owner and you're in a little bit larger of a business, you're busy. And
right.
These things start to add up. 10 times 350 is 3,500.
I think some people, for whatever reason, they don't like to shop. They let the first person who comes and gives them a quote, great, let's do business. It's a different mindset to always want to be lean and pay the lowest price. It's some people are built like that, some are not.
In my guess, and this is just a guess, I'm thinking out of 100 people, it's probably less than 10.
I run my life in the 80-20 rule, so I'll say less than 20%.
Okay. I'll go with that. I don't, but most people I think are at the opposite end. I see so many people who just spend without thinking. And to me, that is so foreign that I just can't comprehend it.
You know, just even your cell phone bill, you need to look at your cell phone bill every year because they're constantly changing the plans. And what you thought was a great deal a year ago could be a really bad deal now. How many people, they don't do that? They don't visit their DirecTV bill to see what's changed. They just don't. They're too busy. It's not important to them. And they'd be shocked what they find out.
There are services now that will do this all for you.
Are there?
Yeah, there are services both for personal and business where, especially on the low-hanging fruit like cable phone, a lot of that's internet. So let's face it, if my business is to call Verizon and negotiate 50 deals a day with Verizon, don't you think I know what I can get away with Verizon?
Right, absolutely.
I can just pick up the phone and go, blah, blah, blah. And they go, okay, click.
Right.
And I'll give you a clap for whatever reason. I'm going to throw my wife under the bus. She listens to Sirius XM in her car. All right. I'm like, you can just stream it on your iPhone. Like we have some of this stuff, or just pick your music playlist. At the end of the day, I don't think my wife drives more than 3,000 or 4,000 miles a year. Like usually she's in my car where she works out of the house. And I'm like, why are we paying for this? So every year I have a thing on my calendar because every year Sirius says it's $18 a month. And every year on that day, I call them up and I press the button to cancel and they come back and go $5 a month.
You're so funny. I do the same exact thing. But how many people do that? Very few.
It's on my calendar because I know.
Same here. I know. Well, every year, it's the same thing with Barron's. It's what I think I pay $52 a year. I know my renewal is going to be $250 a week before I cancel it. And they say, how's $52? I say, okay. You're absolutely right.
You just have to know this stuff and you have to do it. And you don't even. So here's what I tell my business owners. Some of my business owners, I don't have time for that. I'm like, your kid's 18, right? They're like, yeah. I go, you're going to hand him $200 this weekend to do whatever for his events. Why don't you just tell him to call the cable company and then give him the $200?
Yeah, exactly.
At least you're saving money and the kids learning to negotiate and It all works out. Interesting. 100%. So tell us a little bit, your current business, you're in RIA. So explain what an RIA is.
An RIA is a registered investment advisor. And what it means is we're a fiduciary. What people don't realize, if you go to a stockbroker who's on commission at Merrill Lynch, for example, or Morgan Stanley, they work for the firm. Their job is to make that firm money, even if it's not in the best interest of the client. So if Morgan Stanley says, sell Home Depot stock, they have to sell Home Depot stock. Their boss told them to do that. As a fiduciary, I'm not allowed to do that. I have to do what's best for my client. Their interests come before mine and before the broker that we use. And that's a very important difference. So that's what an RIA is. And what I do differently than most RIAs is where my firm is really all about generating income, not just investing in the stock market and hoping for growth. We like to get income every single year for our clients. So at the end of the year, they've made money and they can decide whether to reinvest it or spend it.
And that's a big part. So one of the things that we talk about with Profit First is to have a profit account quarterly, take your profits out, put them somewhere else and invest them. And I don't care if it's another business. I don't care if it's real estate. And this is another alternative. But I find a lot of business owners just don't like the stock market for a variety of reasons. I think a lot of it is they don't understand and they don't have time.
Look, if you're a business owner, you have a lot of risk in your own business. So I think what they say is, I've worked so hard to take this money out of my business, I don't want to risk it. So I would tell someone, if you're under 50, though, it's not a risk. The markets will always be higher 10 or 12 years later. So when you're younger, you really shouldn't be worried about that. In fact, I tell everyone, would you rather buy the S&P 500 at 4,500 or 450? You'd rather buy it at 450, right? Because it's going to be higher when you retire. So if you're young, you should pray for a bear market. You want stocks to go down. You don't want them to go up. My joke is it's like going to Bloomingdale's when they're running a 25% off sale, which they call friends and family. and saying, oh, no, I don't want to pay 25 off. Call me when it's back to full price. And that's what people do with the stock market. Nobody wanted to buy it a year ago today when it was 3,600. They want to buy it today at 4,400. Seems pretty silly to me. But that's for the younger clients. The older clients that are working hard and they're finally profitable and they're taking money out of their business and they don't have, 20-year time horizon, they should be invested more for income that's stable and safe that will add to their net worth.
And I agree with that. I'm like you. I've been waiting for the bear market for years now because it hasn't come. It usually goes through a cycle, and we have not had this downward business cycle because it all comes together. A good downward business cycle is when you pick up market share as a business owner.
Absolutely. And a good recession is good for a smart businessman.
And I don't think business owners always realize that you prepare yourself for a recession so you can go out and you can crush the market while everybody's running away and there's no competition in it.
Well, the first thing you can do is you can get lower prices from your suppliers because it's a recession and you don't have to pass it on to your customers.
There's another option.
The very first thing you're supposed to do, because, depending on who your customer is, but retailers don't come for price decreases. They just want to avoid price increases.
So true. And that's the time you get to do it. We're in weird times. We haven't been able to experience that. And many business owners, if it's been more than 3, 5, 10 years, which it has been, they don't even know that's possible.
Well, they're going to have their time now, right? Because we've had rampant inflation and what comes around goes around, and we will eventually have a recession and we'll have some tough times and you'll have that chance. Because everyone has been raising prices, but your costs will come down. I guarantee people the next 2-3 years, costs will come down.
We're all waiting. I've been waiting.
You've already seen car prices come down, right? The days of paying over list are gone. That was a once in a lifetime opportunity for the car dealers. That's over.
I haven't looked lately, so if that's true, that's wonderful.
A friend of mine looked at a very expensive car. They wanted 30% over, then 20%, then 10%. He ended up buying it 10% under list.
Oh, nice. Okay, so things are...
It's coming back.
Coming back. It's good to hear. Any other business advice that you would like to share with our listeners that we haven't had a chance to talk to?
I think everyone, I had a saying, if you don't know where you want to go, you'll never know how to get there. They should have a goal. How big do they want to be? And don't tell me you want to be as big as you possibly can, because that makes no sense. What level do you need to get to so that you'll be happy? How much money do you want to take out of your business? How are you going to do that? What sales do you need? What kind of infrastructure do you need to get there? And that would also help people run their business more efficiently, because then they'll say, oh, I want to make X dollars. And if I extrapolate that, I can't get there. So either I've got a way to increase my sales or reduce my costs. But so many people just on autopilot, they never take the time to do that plan. And it doesn't take a lot of time. I think people are just afraid to do it because they're afraid of what they're going to see.
And that doesn't surprise me. We say every business is a math problem. And what we like to do is figure out the math problem for that business. And then we go in and we look at all of the different factors in that. We do look at their spending and we go, are you aware of X? And a lot of times people aren't aware of X. And have you bothered to pick up the phone or have somebody in your organization call all these vendors and ask for a discount or ask for something else? If you're doing a lot of business with someone, are you asking for the volume discount? Are you changing your terms? Are you doing something differently? Because when you do that,
try to be a very big customer. Instead of having multiple suppliers for the same product because you think that's safer, give it all to one guy. Be really important to them and you'll get a better price.
It's thinking about your business, spending the time thinking, figuring out the math, and then taking action on it. And this is all like, it doesn't all have to be done at once, a little bit each month. If you could pick up 1% a month.
That's a lot.
In 12 months, you got 12%. That's a lot.
I remember when I was first in business, and we were not a huge business. We were the largest shipping customer in the Cherry Hill, New Jersey area. Not because we were so large, because I would only use one trucking company. That was it. Everybody else was using them all. I would give all my business to one company and I'd get the best price because it was a lot of volume. Small business, a lot of volume. There are ways you can get your costs down if you're a little bit creative.
And I think that's it. It's the thinking time to be creative and figure out how to do that.
When I was in the plumbing business, I remember the Canadians, I found a supplier that was maybe 25% lower than their supplier. And this was an owner. It was his business. He did not want to switch because he was making enough money. He was happy, but 25% is a lot of money. He had a good relationship with the guy. He delivers on time. It was the silliest thing. So in the US, we switched 25% less, never had a problem. And the Canadians still never switched, left all that money on the table for years and years and years. Go figure.
People are stuck in their habits.
Right.
If people would like to learn more about you, your services, how can they connect?
Just go to my website, americanasset.com. Everything there is about us, our philosophy, how we do business. And there's our phone number. Give us a call. I'm happy to talk to them.
And we will put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Rocky.
Let me ask you a question. Are you keeping your overhead low? Are you keeping your staff lean? Do you make decisions based on ego or assumptions or wild and crazy predictions? How often do you have conversations to negotiate your terms with your vendors like your clients do with you? And be prepared. If we go into a downturn, you gotta cut expenses ruthlessly and make sure you stay lean and nimble. The smart thing is to have a plan before it happens. So when it happens, you're not sitting there holding your breath, you're taking action. The other thing is, hey, how do you consolidate suppliers or maybe talk with some of your other friends and create a buying group so that you can get better prices for your needed inputs? Put a couple of these together, you're bound to grow your cash flow and improve your profits. Now, once you do that, find somebody like Julian to help you invest that money, build multiple streams of income, do treasury management where they help you make the money you've got in your business grow while it's sitting there waiting for these opportunities, or put together retirement plans for you because you never know. And hey, one day you're going to want to be done. And as always, this episode shows you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful and focus on the bottom line.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done for you service, you can hire us as your chief profitability officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.